Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into some fresh headlines. Today we're heading north, way north, to the Faroe Islands.
Always a good time for a little Faroes news roundup.
Right, okay, so picture this. You're in a cozy Faroes cafe, cup of coffee in hand, browsing the local news. What's catching your eye?
Probably a mix of things you know, local happenings, those big global stories, and everything in between.
Exactly. And we've got a good mix for you today, but let's start with something that hits close to home for the Faroe Islands.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Big news from their neighbors in Iceland. The government has collapsed. They call it Samgongoslit.
Some Gongaslit, huh? So what triggered it?
Seems like disagreements on immigration and energy policy were the final straw. Now they're facing snap elections in November.
Wow, that's huge. And considering how closely tied Iceland and the Faroe Islands are, any political shift there is going to have people talking.
Absolutely. Especially since those same topics, immigration, energy, they're being hotly debated in the Faroe Islands too. There's actually a big debate going on right now about the Buskapargrunnen.
To what a Grennan.
The Buskapargrunnen, it's the Faroes Business Fund.
Ah, okay. So we're talking about government support for businesses, economic development, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Some people are calling for big changes, legislative changes to how the fund is structured and managed.
Always a hot button issue, government involvement in the economy. I
Mm.
can see why that would spark some lively debate.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of lively debates, another topic's dominating the headlines over there, housing. It's
Are
something a
there-
lot of places are grappling with right now, and the Faroe Islands are no exception.
Yeah, affordable housing, accessibility.
Yeah.
It's a global issue for sure.
Yeah.
What's the situation like in the Faroe Islands specifically?
Well, there's a lot of focus on Boostedere, their public housing agency. It seems like there are concerns about their leadership, whether they have enough staff, and just their overall ability to tackle these housing challenges.
That's interesting. Public agencies often find themselves under the microscope, especially when it comes to meeting the needs of the people they're supposed to serve.
It's a tough spot to be in, for sure. But now, let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about those local issues, but there are also some major international events making waves in the Faroe Islands and around the world, of course.
Yeah, can't ignore those global headlines. What's grabbing people's attention?
Well, first, the conflict between Israel and Palestine. It's incredibly tense right now, with reports of Hezbollah drone strikes against Israel. There have been casualties, and the U.S. is even sending a missile defense ship to the region.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly situations can escalate, and unfortunately, that's not the only conflict weighing on people's minds.
Sadly, no. The war in Ukraine is still ongoing. The situation in the Kursk region in particular is looking very, very precarious. Russian forces are advancing, and it seems like they could encircle Ukrainian units there.
Just heartbreaking. It's important to remember these aren't just headlines, they represent real lives and real suffering.
You're absolutely right. Okay, so we've covered some pretty heavy stuff. Ready for something a little lighter?
A little dose of positivity wouldn't hurt.
Perfect. Because we found a truly heartwarming story from the Faroe Islands. Get this, the students in Runavik are absolutely loving their dance-themed break times.
Wait, what? Dance-themed breaks. Tell me more.
Apparently, they've incorporated dancing into their school day as a way to promote well-being and get those kids moving. And it's a huge hit.
I love that. It's so important to find creative ways to support kids' physical and mental health. Maybe we could all use a little more dancing in our lives.
You know, it's amazing how those little everyday stories can really paint a picture of a place, right? Like we were just talking about those dance breaks, but now I'm thinking about the bigger picture of housing in the Faroe Islands. Remember Boosteyr, that public housing agency?
Yeah, the one that's at the center of those housing debates. What's the latest there?
It seems like opinions are pretty divided on the best way forward. Some folks are calling for a complete overhaul of Boosteyr. They say it's become too bureaucratic, too slow to adapt, and out of touch with people's actual needs.
I've heard similar arguments about large institutions in other contexts. It's a common concern that over time they can become less flexible, less responsive.
Exactly. But then there's the other side of the argument. There are also those who believe that Boosteyr plays a vital role in making sure everyone has access to affordable housing. They're worried about any major changes that could disrupt that.
It's a tough situation, finding that balance between preserving what works and making necessary updates. It takes a lot of careful consideration and open dialogue.
For sure. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Something else that caught my eye. There's been a surge in interest in sheep farming in the Faroe Islands.
Really? That's interesting considering how important sheep are to their history and culture.
I know. This traditional practice is finding new life. We found some articles about farmers trying out different breeds of sheep that are better suited to the Faroes climate.
Yeah.
Hardier, more resilient,
Adapting to the environment, that makes sense.
right? And some farmers are even getting creative with marketing their wool and meat to international buyers.
It's great to see tradition and innovation working together like that. They're honoring their heritage while also finding ways to thrive in a global market.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are deeply rooted in Faroes culture, there was this really interesting article about the importance of preserving the Faroes language.
That's something that resonates everywhere these days, especially for smaller language communities. In a world that's becoming more and more interconnected, it's a constant challenge to keep those languages alive.
And it feels especially important in the Faroe Islands.
Yeah.
Their language is so unique, so tied to their identity. It's more than just words. It's about preserving their history, their stories.
Absolutely. Languages carry so much cultural weight, generations of knowledge and traditions. Losing them would be a huge loss for humanity as a whole.
Well said. But it's not all doom and gloom. It seems like there's some really cool initiatives in the Faroe Islands to get younger generations excited about their language. We're talking language immersion programs in schools, even a new TV show entirely in Faroes.
Now, that's a great way to engage younger audiences. When you can incorporate a language into popular media, it really brings it to life.
Totally. Speaking of things that are alive and kicking, the Faroe Islands art scene is having a moment.
Oh, I love that. What kind of art are we talking about?
There's so much variety. We found one article about this young Faroes photographer who's making a name for herself internationally with her incredible landscape photography. Her photos are amazing, stark, beautiful, almost otherworldly.
Those landscapes practically beg to be photographed. There's just something about them rugged, windswept, raw.
Right. Then there's this other article about a new art exhibit that's got everyone talking. It features contemporary sculptures that are inspired by traditional Faroes boat-building techniques.
That's such a cool concept. It's like they're taking something very old and familiar and seeing it through a modern lens.
Exactly. And it just shows that you can find inspiration anywhere, even in ancient boat building. But art isn't just confined to museums and galleries in the Faroe Islands. For those who prefer their art with a sight of fresh air, hiking and outdoor activities are becoming super popular.
Well, yeah, with those views, those dramatic cliffs, the rolling green hills, the vast ocean, it's a hiker's paradise.
And they've got trails for everyone, from easy coastal walks to more intense climbs for experienced hikers.
I can imagine the sense of accomplishment after reaching the top of one of those cliffs, looking out at the endless ocean.
It must be breathtaking. And hey, if you're lucky, you might even spot a puffin or two while you're out there. Okay, now that's a view I'd hike for. But speaking of things that are important for the future, have we talked about education in the Faroe Islands yet?
Oh, good catch. Yes, we do have some interesting education news. It seems like they're really focused on making sure their students have those essential 21st century skills.
Absolutely essential these days. We're talking adaptability, critical thinking, digital literacy. Those are the skills that will serve them well in today's world.
Right. And one school in the Faroe Islands is taking a really innovative approach. They started teaching coding and robotics, get this, in primary school.
Wow, starting them young. That's impressive.
Right. And then there's another school that's partnering with a tech company to offer internships to high school students who are interested in STEM fields.
Love to hear that. It's such a win-win. Students get real-world experience, and companies get to connect with the next generation of innovators.
It's a fantastic model. But it's not just about STEM either. The Faroe Islands are also placing a big emphasis on creativity, collaboration, problem solving, those essential soft skills. It's about developing well-rounded individuals, ready to face whatever challenges or opportunities come their way.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, we've covered a lot. Sheep farming, language, art, education.
Hmm.
But before we move on, I want to touch on transportation. It's a big deal for the Faroe Islands, right?
Mm.
Especially with their unique geography.
Absolutely. Getting around those islands can't be easy. What are they doing to address that?
It seems like their big focus is on improving connections between the islands. That's good for residents, of course, but it's also a big draw for tourism.
Makes sense. Reliable transportation is crucial for any island nation, for the economy, for daily life.
You got it. They're looking at all sorts of options. Expanding their tunnel and bridge network, bringing in new ferries. There's even talk of a small airport on one of the smaller islands.
That's ambitious. But they're not just focused on connecting physically, right? They're also thinking about sustainability and their environmental impact.
Exactly. That's actually what I was going to say next. There's a big push towards ecotourism and reducing their carbon footprint in the Faroe Islands.
It's encouraging to hear that they're taking this seriously.
They're really putting in the effort, too. They're encouraging electric vehicles, promoting responsible hiking, and investing heavily in renewable energy.
That's fantastic. They're not just talking about it, they're taking action.
And it sends a powerful message, too. Even a small nation like the Faroe Islands can be a leader in the fight against climate change. It's something we can all learn from.
It's a good reminder that everyone has a role to play. No effort is too small when it comes to something as important as the future of our planet.
Well said. Okay, one last story that caught my eye before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. There's a really positive trend emerging in the Faroe Islands. More and more women are taking on leadership roles.
Ah, that's wonderful. In what areas are they making the biggest impact?
It's across the board. There are more women in the Faroes parliament than ever before. They're shaping policies on everything from gender equality and social justice to economic development and environmental issues.
It's amazing to see them taking such an active role in shaping the future of their nation.
It's inspiring. And it's not just politics either. We're seeing more women leaders in business, education, the arts, really. Every field you can think of.
That's what progress looks like.
Exactly. Okay, so we've gone from housing debates to sheep farms, from breathtaking art to those amazing women leaders. It's incredible how much ground we've covered just by focusing on this one small corner of the world.
You know, it's amazing how even when we zoom in on a place like the Faroe Islands, we end up talking about these universal themes: economic challenges, environmental concerns, social progress. These are things that people everywhere are grappling with.
That's such a good point. It highlights how interconnected we all are, right?
Absolutely. It reminds us that we're all part of this big, messy, beautiful world, all trying to figure things out together.
Okay, so we've journeyed all the way to the Faroe Islands, from their bustling capital to those windswept cliffs and those cozy cafes with the best pancake smells.
It's been quite a journey, from political dramas and pancake champions to innovative schools and those breathtaking landscapes. We've really gotten a feel for what makes the Faroe Islands tick.
You know, one thing that's really stayed with me throughout this whole deep dive is the theme of resilience.
Oh, absolutely. Everywhere we turn, it seems like the Faroe Islanders are facing challenges head on, whether it's those housing shortages, the uncertainties in the economy, or even the looming threat of climate change. But there's this incredible spirit there, this drive to adapt and overcome.
That's it exactly. Think about the students in Rinavik finding joy and connection through dance, or those sheep farmers who are blending centuries-old traditions with modern technology, or those passionate advocates fighting to preserve their language. It's like this underlying current of strength and resourcefulness that just shines through.
It's really inspiring, isn't it? It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, even when things seem uncertain, there's always that spark of hope, that belief in a brighter future.
It makes you think, what can we all learn from the way the Faroe Islanders approach these really complex issues?
It's a good question. Maybe it's about striking that balance, embracing global interconnectedness while also fiercely protecting what makes a place unique. Or maybe it's about remembering that even amidst the uncertainty, there's always room for joy, room for innovation, for celebrating those things that connect us all, like a shared love of pancakes.
Okay, maybe that last one is just me, but you've hit on something important. It's that willingness to embrace the big picture and the small moments, the serious and the lighthearted. That's what shapes our understanding of the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Faroe Islands, maybe we can all take a moment to appreciate those things in our own lives too.
I love that. So take a look around. How are those global trends we talked about playing out in your own community? What stories of resilience, innovation, maybe even pancake making are waiting to be discovered right where you are?
It's a big, fascinating world out there just waiting to be explored.
And that's a wrap on today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back next time with more stories from around the globe. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those deep dives going.